Hi, welcome to the first episode of The Heartbeat, our regular check-in on the pulse of the community. On The Heartbeat, we will regularly highlight current stories, essential resources, and events related to power-based violence. I'm Jen Metcalf, the Community Engagement and Prevention Director at Hartley House, and I'm joined today by Caroline Dado, our Community Engagement Prevention Lead and the host of our Connect and Thrive podcast. And today we're going to cover the recently released batch of Jeffrey Epstein files and talk about what they reveal about power, exploitation, and have some critical conversations around the age of consent.
And now we're recording this podcast on the morning of November 18th. And so by the time you listen to this podcast, different news and information may be released. So know that you are in the future. And we
We are in
don't
the
know.
future. We don't
We
know.
don't know what's happening in that timeline.
We don't. So earlier this month, thousands of pages of previously sealed documents were made public. Those include emails, flight logs, and depositions that shed light on Epstein's network and influence. Survivors and advocates have been calling for transparency around this for years, and we're really just now starting to see how far-reaching this case was. And just to note, these survivors really have been leading the charge on this for over a decade, and really emphasizing this isn't about politics or about political drama. This is about accountability for human trafficking, for sexual abuse. And every time these new details emerge, it really just reopens wounds for those survivors. So those who are out there saying they're just doing it for attention or for money or whatever, don't understand the depth of the suffering that these women, that these survivors have endured. And really, full disclosure is going to be essential for justice and for preventing future exploitation in this situation. So, on that note, Caroline, I really wanted to kind of lean into this idea about age of consent and some misconceptions around that.
Absolutely. There's been a lot of conversations about age of consent and if people are barely legal, if they are able to give consent. And that conversation is honestly really unempathetic and really inconsiderate. And so we wanted to talk about that, that regardless of somebody's age, consent is necessary.
Yeah,
And there are laws in place where making, people aren't able to give consent, right? If somebody is a
yeah,
child, if they are under the age of 18, even if they're 17, they are not legally can give consent,
right.
right?
Like full stop.
Full stop.
Full stop.
And I think a lot of people that are having these conversations that are talking about this don't understand the dynamics of power-based violence or just power dynamics in general,
Right.
right? We are holding 15, 16, 17-year-old girls to a higher standard than we are to 40-year-old men. And that is unacceptable. You're asking or saying that a 15-year-old should have stood up to a 40-year-old man and said no without completely understanding the power dynamics of what's going on.
Like the prefrontal cortex, right? It's not developed. And you're talking about these 40, 50-year-old men. These aren't just any men either. These are super wealthy, super powerful men. One that we know for a fact is like Prince Andrew, right? Like he's a prince of England. There's a power dynamic there that is just
Yes.
unmatched in like your
And it's
normal day-to-day
unspoken
life.
too. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't need to, I think people don't understand the power dynamics of unspoken coercion, of unspoken pressure and manipulation,
yeah,
and how that changes the way we interact with people.
absolutely.
If
And a
somebody
lot of
is related to your well-being, related to status, related to money, that is
mhm,
going to change the way you interact with that person, full stop.
absolutely. And a lot of Epstein's victims were well below 18. We're talking 11 to 14-year-olds here. These are not, and it doesn't matter, but these aren't like girls who are about to turn 18, girls who are about to go to college, right? These are young teenagers that we're talking about. And like you were saying, really under those coercive circumstances. So there's multiple layers here, and that's where we get into not just sexual abuse, but that trafficking piece, right? Where there's coercion, false pretenses, false promises, things like that. And it's just really, it's very black and white. Sometimes the work here is nuanced, sometimes there are layers, but this is very black and white. Under 18, and there is coercion involved. But this is really kind of open this topic of what does society tolerate when it comes to abuse? And when we
Hmm.
bring in those phrases like barely legal, almost legal, that starts to blur those lines.
Yeah.
And all that does is just protect the abuser, not the victims in these
Yeah.
situations. And just a thing that we talk about a lot in our conversations is we all have survivors in our lives, whether we know it or not. And so it's just another reminder of how we're talking about these conversations, how we're engaging in this topic. It's going to impact those people around us who have also been through these
Yes.
types of violence, who have also experienced coercive control, and who have not felt like they had voice or were being believed or being protected by the systems in place. So there's such a ripple effect to it. A lot of wounds being
Yes.
reopened.
And what you say about the Epstein files, what you say about the Diddy trial, or things of this nature that are in the spotlight, does have a ripple effect to the people around you, right? Again, I don't think anyone listening to this podcast personally knows Diddy. Maybe I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that Diddy is going to hear what you have to say or your opinions on this matter, but your friends, your family members, and your loved ones are. And the way in which you speak about the survivors and victims in these cases matters because you can either build that trust between you and the survivors in your life or break it down by the way you speak.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you brought in the Diddy trial, Caroline, because that's just a reminder. If you want a deeper dive into the dynamics of power and control and coercion, we have a longer episode on our Connect and Thrive podcast about the Diddy trial specifically. So that's a great space if you really want to hear a longer conversation about this. And then just as we wrap up, a lot of people this time of year want to know how they can support Hartley House. We're doing our annual gift card drive. So if you are interested, we would love to have donations of gift cards. We're looking for things like Target, Walmart, grocery stores, so that we can share those with our clients who this time of year need a little extra help purchasing maybe gifts or food for the holidays. We also always take money. If you go to hartleyhouse.org/donate, you can find all those ways that you can support us. And just reminder that every contribution really makes our survivors feel connected and cared for this holiday season. Um, yeah. So thank you guys for tuning in. We're really excited to have this space to talk about these topics. If you want to learn more, hartleyhouse.org is a great place. We're on all the socials at Hartley House. And subscribe to the podcast. That way you always know what we're talking about, what's going on. And just remember, together we can create a community where everyone feels safe and valued. So until next time, take care and keep advocating for change.